Hello, and thanks so much for taking a few minutes to watch this video today. So I am going to go over the importance of having the end in mind when starting your business. Now, if you're not a new business owner and you've been in business for a few years now, this may still very much apply to you because I myself didn't come across this notion until about year 3 of my company. And once I did, I will tell you that the clarity of knowing what the end looks like for my company was a game changer in how I operated as a business owner, how I structured my company going forward, and and how it affected all of the decisions I made up to the point of when I exited my own business. Everybody's end is going to look different. So at the end of this video too, I will show you, or get you started rather, on thinking about how you can apply this concept to your own business. So when I first started my business, I was incredibly naive and new to business in general. Up until that point, I hadn't had too much experience with running a business, and I had just quit my full-time job to hang out my shingles, and that was it. Outside of that, I didn't have too much of a blueprint. I didn't have any mentors or coaches that I can rely on. So I was really kind of figuring things out on my own, which means that I made a lot of mistakes by trial and error, and also discovered a lot of lessons along the way. Now, one of the lessons that I learned along the way is this concept of starting with the end in mind. And like I said, I kind of came across this a little bit accidentally, where I was just kind of listening to some people interview and talk about their own business. And somehow this really stuck with me. And so when I really embraced this idea of knowing in the beginning of what my business will look like at the end, all of a sudden I realized it completely simplified a lot of noise that I was feeling when I was running my company. You see, when you don't have a clear picture of where you're going, there's a lot of options and shiny objects that you might end up running after. That's a complete waste of time and energy. And so if you spend a little bit of time, which for me, it took me a few weeks for sure, to really clarify what the end in mind looks like for you and for your business, then you end up shedding all of the noise that comes with being a business owner. And then you set this end in mind as kind of your North Star for every decision you make and every action you take for your business. Now, I'm going to share with you what my end in mind was, but first, let me set the context of where I was in about year 3 of my business. So I had opened my doors up as an outsourced accounting provider. So basically my aim was to work with companies that were growing and scaling quickly, wasn't quite in a position of hiring like in-house full-time staff for their accounting function, maybe needed the complexity of controller and a CFO, but really just didn't have the budget to have that fully in-house, but certainly has outgrown their bookkeepers. And so that was kind of the market that I was going after. And I was doing okay. I had a book of clients. I was doing all the work myself. I was really learning a lot also about my business, about other people's business, and about just providing the service in general. And so I was, in a sense, kind of treading water, or at least that's how it felt. I mean, on paper, everything seemed great, but it wasn't quite the business that I wanted to build. In fact, it just felt like I just kind of created another job for myself, which wasn't my intention when I went into business. But because I never really took the time to really clarify what I wanted and what my end was for my business, I was just, living in mediocre unhappiness, where it wasn't painful enough for me to get out, but it wasn't pleasurable enough for me to stay in. So when this idea of defining the end in mind kind of came across my attention, something kind of just snapped in place. And I was like, all right, this is it. Like, enough is enough. I can't just be treading water. I want to do something with this business, and this is how I'm going to do it. So my end in mind was that I want to create a business that was sellable and can be sold in 10 or less years. And during this time, I wanted to mine as much business experience and business know-how so that once I exited this company, I was able to launch another company in a different industry. So once I figured out what my end in mind was, the first thing I did was to see how much resources I can get my hands on about how to build a sellable company. And so I scoured the internet, I scoured books, I scoured any kind of online resources to pick together what it takes to build a company that would sell. One of the things I honed in on was, hey, who are my buyers? So who would be interested in buying my company, and what kind of company did I need to create for it to be appealing to the most number of buyers? Because the fact that I had a very short period of time that I wanted to get this done in, which is less than 10 years. Now, keep in mind, I was doing accounting, so I'm not I'm not like an IT startup company who develops some kind of program or platform. So having a company that sells in less than 10 years is actually a very hard thing to do in a very short timeline for any companies that's kind of outside of this IT industry. And so being the fact that I set myself up so that I wanted to be able to exit this business in 10 years, I wanted to be able to appeal to the most number of buyers possible. So I started doing some research about all of the local accounting companies and seeing, well, what is it that they're missing that they would maybe be attracted to buying instead of creating it in-house? And kind of by an off chance, what happened was, according to my research, is that a lot of local companies don't have an outsourced accounting arm to their business. When I had first started my company, I have to say I didn't do too much market research because I didn't know any better. But so it actually turned out to be quite my luck that I found out that these companies were needing a service that I was already providing. But the only thing was, the way I had my company structured currently was I was a one-person shop. And being a one-person shop is just not that appealing for a company to buy. So what I really needed to do was turn my company into a turnkey business so that one of these larger companies in the area will see how my company is doing and say, hey, instead of spending all this money trying to build up a department in-house, why don't we just buy her company that is already set up and ready to turn over, and then we'll just bring that in-house and add that arm in that revenue line, and that is so much cheaper and easier than it is trying to build something from the ground up, and it would be a lot quicker. And so that's really where I wanted to go with my business, and that's how I wanted to set it up. So that's exactly what I did. So one of the first things I did was that I immediately started figuring out how I was going to hire people. Because, like I said, a one-person shop is just not that appealing to be sold as a business. And so I decided that, hey, immediately I need to hire people. And because of the fact that, again, I had a very short timeline, I decided to go straight for hiring W-2 employees versus 1099 contractors in the area. Because if a company is looking to buy a turnkey service, they need the people to come with the service, and independent contractors aren't as reliant as a W-2 employee when it comes to staying loyal with a company. And so that was my first decision that I did. The other thing I did was deciding what services I wanted to offer, if I wanted to offer anything outside of outsourced accounting or even in the immediate realm. And so I ended up limiting the amount of services I was going to offer because I wanted to be really niched. I wanted to be really specialized. Again, I just felt like this would be so much more appealing to other buyers in the area. And so I ended up not branching out too much outside of outsourced accounting. In fact, I didn't even offer consulting services, which was probably a pretty easy add-on. But I felt like consulting services kind of took a little bit too much away from our main focus and spotlighted service, which was outsourced accounting. So I ended up not offering that. Now, the other thing is I also changed how I was getting my customers. So it took me a couple years to kind of build my employee list because I also was new to hiring. So I didn't know anything about hiring people, managing people, training people, retaining people. So I spent a couple years learning some hard lessons there. And so once I got that stabilized, I next turned my attention to how we were getting customers. So up till that point, I was the main rainmaker of my company, and my company was really just getting business out of referrals. And this is very common for most businesses, so I found out, is to kind of build your business around just getting referrals. And oftentimes the founder is kind of the main rainmaker, meaning that if there was a referral to be made, somebody will refer them directly to the founder, who then probably will turn it over to their staff or whatever the case may be. But still, they're still the main key to attracting new business. And I knew that as a sellable company, if a business was wholly reliant on me to bring in new business, that didn't make it very attractive or very valuable in a sale, unless the company wanted to retain me. But don't forget that my end in mind was the fact that I wanted to be able to launch new businesses after I exited this business. So I wasn't interested in staying on board too long with my buyers. And so that meant that I needed to build a business that was independent from me. So then because of this, I ended up investing a lot of money into digital marketing. And then we started having email campaigns, digital presence, online website, revamping, everything so that we can kind of attract and have a marketing and sales funnel digitally so that new business was going to be attracted to our company through means other than myself. Again, that took about a year to build up because I knew nothing about digital marketing. So working with a marketing agency and getting that all set up led to a complete rebrand of my business, which also led to a whole bunch of other complexities that I'm happy to get into on another video, but certainly not this one. But that did kind of drive the direction of why I ended up investing money into digital marketing. And then overall, knowing this end in mind also changed how I ran my company internally. Because again, in my mind was, hey, I need a turnkey business. I need a turnkey business. So I did spend a lot of effort setting up processes and documenting processes and testing processes so that things that ran in my business was following a consistent process. Now, that also meant that I spent a lot of effort on eliminating exceptions. And this was across the board about eliminating exceptions. It was eliminating exceptions of how we did things internally. It was also eliminating exceptions of how we worked with our customers and which customers we took on. And so businesses, and I certainly did this, had some clients that I was working with where we provided a service a certain way only for them because they were willing to pay for it. And, at the time you didn't want to say no to them. And so you kind of had this weird exception where this one client did it this way and maybe two other clients do it a couple different ways. And now you just have a bunch of exceptions that you're catching. And so I actually put my foot down and kind of eliminated a lot of the exceptions I had across the board with the company, just so, again, I was creating this turnkey business that I could sell. So having this end in mind really drove a lot of decisions I made in the business. Now, the one thing I really did appreciate is that because I had this end in mind, it really acted as a North Star, especially when I had like a lot of options and a lot of different decisions I could have made. And sometimes you just kind of drown in the number of options you have as a business owner because everything is possible. And there's a lot of like new shiny objects that you might want to run after or just new ideas that if I didn't have this end in mind, I felt like I may have kind of went off the rails a little bit, pursuing things that may have not necessarily attributed or contributed to my end in mind. Okay, I want to help you define what the end in mind is for you now. Before you jump into this exercise, one thing I will say is that it will take you some time. This is not a 5-minute exercise by any means. And it took me a couple weeks, if not maybe even a couple of months to really clarify what my end in mind is that works for me. So if you're doing this by yourself, I would say a pen and paper to kind of write out your answer. If you have somebody that you can actually speak to and have them kind of respond to your response, that's even better. Certainly you can do that. But otherwise, at the very least, I would say you need to write out the answer rather than just keeping it all in your head. So take some time aside to kind of sit down and really think about this question I'm about to ask you, which will get you in the right frame of mind to think about what your end in mind is. And the question is this: if I were to call you on your 80th birthday, what would you have told me happened to your company? And I want you to start the answer with something along the lines of, hey, Tiffany, like it went amazing because ... Or Tiffany, like it was the most memorable period of my life because of ... Right? Start with some kind of positive emotions and then write out, well, what happened? And the more detailed you can get into, the better. And if you get stuck in certain places, just spend some time on it because you'll work it through. If it's really hazy to you in the beginning, I promise you, if you spend time on it, like I said, I spent weeks, if not a couple months on it, it will clarify at some point because it is really important for you to really see this end clearly and you're able to actually feel it and visualize it for yourself. Now, once you're done with that question, the follow-up question I also want you to think about is, what is your relationship with that company currently? Now, again, I'm calling you on your 80th birthday, so it is whatever your relationship is on your 80th birthday. And for example, if you weren't there to sell your business like I was, then you may still have an active relationship with your company. And what does that relationship look like? Maybe you handed it off to your kids, maybe you sold it to your employees, maybe you even went public with your company. Let me know, what is it? What kind of relationship do you have with your business? So I'm going to give you an example of an answer that you may or may not come up with. So let's say, for example, your answer was, Tiffany, I had the best time of my life with my business. It was incredibly successful. I left it to the right hands, and I learned so much that I was able to do whatever I wanted in life. It helped me and my other half pursue our dreams. And now at 80, I've been retired for a few years now, and I'm living life. So that is your answer, something along these lines. I will tell you right now that that is way too vague. You have to be more specific than that. If you can attach timelines to something or feelings or anything like that is very, very specific, that is better. The clearer it is and the more you're able to visualize it, the better it is. And this is also why it's great to do it with somebody like sitting across from you, because they're going to be able to kind of come back and be like, well, what do you mean by that? And do you mean this? Or I don't know, what is your definition of success? Or who's the right hands? And what did you learn by saying that you learned a lot? And, helping you pursue your dreams, what does that mean? What other dreams were you pursuing? So make sure that you are very, very specific in your answers to these questions. And once you try that out, you should have a fairly clear idea of what the end in mind is for you. And make sure you own it. At the end of the day, this is your end in mind. So don't feel like you need to justify it to anybody. Don't feel like you need to explain yourself. You don't need to apologize for any of it. This is your end in mind. This is your desire of what you want to do with your company. And once you know this, then I would say go all in and pursue it. All right, that's all I got for you today. Thanks so much for sticking with me until the end, and I will see you on the next video.